Yes, so as Niklas introduced it, I'll be presenting one part of this meetup, and Lev in the back will be presenting the second part. And we're going to go through what exactly is OpenUI and how should we use it. We're also going to show some code samples, but essentially we've made CMS extensibility much easier than it was before. So when you look at what is OpenUI, what do we want it to be? So we want OpenUI to enable our solution partners, but also our implementation partners, to integrate external systems into Bloomreach interface, which in turn creates a single place where business can manage all of their digital experience functions. So essentially just being able to create integrations with different systems much easier than they are actually doing it right now. So just going quickly in an example of OpenUI, so just kind of get an idea of what it is or what it can be used of. This is one of the first OpenUI plugins we've created with Sidehorse, and the OpenUI plugin you see here is embedded in the right sidebar, and it actually looks quite native to the CMS, right, to the channel manager. And in this example, what Sidehorse does is that it will analyze your page here on the left, and also in preview mode, and it will actually do some analytics based on those pages, and it will calculate, for example, the SEO rating and some other things as well. So this is something that also Lev and I were involved with. So this was the very first OpenUI plugin, and ever since then we got the opportunity also to experiment with some more plugins, which you're going to see during this presentation. All right, so maybe a very obvious one, why OpenUI? I think everybody who has ever done a CMS customization in the CMS has come across this technology here, and who actually enjoyed working with Wicked? Well, yeah, at the beginning it was actually not that bad. It was completely Java based, and everything was kind of very obvious. But then again, every time you needed to actually get something to work, you need to compile it, build it, run it, whatever. And of course, later on, we also had the ability to use tools such as JRebel or what was the other one? Hot Swap Agent, which is now very current, which you can use for free. So in any case, developing in Wicked was very annoying. It was very troublesome, and it wouldn't really get us the most beautiful of UIs as well. So everything you want to style, you need to style yourself, and you couldn't make you could make use of particular frameworks, but you needed to do all of it kind of yourself, right? And the technology nowadays, you already have these very nice dialogues, forms, whatever, with already styled in such a nice way, responsive and everything. So that will actually kind of be answering the question of why did we start using OpenUI. So next up is going to be on how to start working with OpenUI, just for you kind of to get a head start. Is there already something there? Can I use it instead of discovering it myself? And usually when I go to customers and we say we have this option of using OpenUI and creating extensibility in your CMS by embedding a front-end application, yeah, they get a little bit scared. So how much time is it going to take for me to develop this, right? That's the kind of the first question that pops up. So just going already kind of into how much time does it cost, you'll actually see eventually what you need to do to make it work. I find it actually much easier to work with than doing something with Wicked. I mean, you can get a plugin working. I'm going to show one later on, which you could actually get working in 40, 50 minutes into the CMS. So we offer some extension points which you can use in OpenUI. So we currently opened up 2 extension points. One is embedding an OpenUI application within the document field, which I'm going to present a little bit later on as well. I'm going to showcase the external document picker recreated in OpenUI. And we also open up another extension point, which are the page tools. As you've seen in the slide before with the Sidehorse, Lev is going to show you on how to actually integrate Google Analytics so that you can actually get some live Google Analytics feeds in your right sidebar menu in the channel manager. Some things that are also coming up is that we also want to have it in the component editor. So whenever you click on a component, you have all these component properties. Currently, you only have access to string, drop-downs, maybe a document picker, but you also want to extend that so that you can even create some own plugins there as well. Perspectives also coming, and we're also going to implement one OpenUI extension point in the workflow menu. All right, next one. Okay, so when we look at the extension point for the document field, there are several cases which we thought we could work with. So one of them would be an integration with a digital asset management system such as Binder. Maybe you want to create a picker for S3 resources. Azure Blob, I know Roy has worked, I think, on getting getting Azure to work with the external document picker. But when you look at commerce, you also want to integrate with systems such as product information management systems like Oracle or Hybris, that you can pick documents from an external system, that you can actually show them or display them in a product grid or product list. Maybe some other things which we might consider using the document field extension is currently we do have a taxonomy plugin, but you probably know it isn't really up to date. It looks a little bit ugly, and the requests which actually are about taxonomy are also getting more and more complex. So actually there are whole systems which actually manage taxonomies, and you might rather just want to use those systems and integrate it with it using a OpenUI extension point such as the document fields. Another really interesting part which you can use OpenUI with in combination with the document fields extension is creating your own rich text editor. And I actually have an example where I integrated a markdown editor as a document field one, just as an alternative as the CK editor we have now. So what I'm just going to show you is an example of the Binder plugin, or sorry, of the integration with Binder we created with OpenUI. So just for you to kind of get an idea on how it looks like. Oh, no, that's good. Yeah, sorry. I hope it's okay. So you see here on the top right, we actually are actually loading in. Oh, sorry. My bad. Yeah. So on the top right here is actually where you can see that there is an iframe in there. You probably can't see it. It looks very native, right? So once you click on the select assets, this dialog pops up. You can select an image which is actually loaded directly in from Binder. You can use some facets in there. And once you select the image, you can click on the button Add Media. No. Sorry, the shortcuts are a little bit off here. You can actually click on the button Add Media, and that particular image is now set to this document. So this is an example of how you can integrate with the digital asset management system. And what Binder has done for this, they already created this whole view you see here, which they call compact view. And the only thing what we needed to do is just a couple of lines of JavaScript code and just make sure that it's somewhere available online so that we can embed it as an iframe in the document field, and it's already available. So I think our product management, Gijs from product management, who isn't even that much of a coder, just created this. I think he did it just maybe in like a couple of days' time without any, without that much experiencing with coding at all. So the next one is actually one I was experimenting with, and I actually wanted to see how easy it would be to create a markdown editor in this particular document field. And there was already kind of a piece of software called StackEdit, which is an online markdown editor, and it was already available so that you can actually embed it in your own application. So you have kind of an edit view and a preview view, and easily you could just embed it as well using OpenUI extension point on the document field, and you would have your own rich text editor in your document field. Yeah. So one thing to note as well, we've only looked at the view here in the document fields, but it's also available in the visual editor in the channel manager. So the both extension points are looking exactly the same, which you're also going to see in the later demo. All right, so that actually covers just the basics about document fields and their particular cases. But page tools, you can also integrate with page tools. So what usually would you use page tools for? One of them would be, for example, analytics. Other could be search. You could, for example, also start loading in a page tool on landing pages, and maybe with just a trigger, you can index them into your enterprise search solution. Maybe you can remove them from enterprise search solution, so you can integrate it completely with search as well, such as Elasticsearch or something else. What you could also do is manage a pixel. So let's say you have some kind of tracking agent on your website. You could manage some page metadata there as well, or you can also embed some widgets, which are, for example, a calendar or notes or something you can just keep track of. Any cases somebody has thought here about using those two extension points to solve some kind of problem?
Is it also available when you're creating a new page?
Yeah. No, so whenever you are, maybe Lev can answer that one. The page tools.
Yeah. When you are inside the channel manager, you go left, create new page. Is that also already available there? Is OpenUI also available there?
Yes, so whenever you can do the same from the OpenUI extension, basically. So you can create a sitemap or tweak the whole page and the components that are available in the channel manager and just refresh everything in there already. So you can either refresh metadata of the channel as the channel at home or the page that you're currently previewing.
Really on the moment I'm creating. So, for example, the new case is when I'm starting to create a page, can I load in some last lookup values from Google that says these are the most search values at the moment you should create a page with this name?
Yes, we did this for our integration with BRSM. We call that thematic pages. So this external service, BRSM, will actually offer you, for example, this is a list of pages you should have in your system. Click on it, and it automatically creates a page for you. So yes, you could use it for those kind of scenarios. Another one, which was also very frequent, is that whenever you probably had it with customers as well. When you're on a content page, they want to drag and drop some things in there, but you only want them on a content page, right? You could create an OpenUI extension in the page tool where you could say, from this moment on, I want this page not to be a content page, which only use one template, but I want to have it as a separate template. You could essentially use an OpenUI plugin for that as well in the page tools. But this one I get really frequent. And I know with our new demo, we call it a product enrichment or product experience page, is that we kind of deviate from the basic template for a product detail page. We can click on it and we can start adding our own components on there. All right, so an example of sitemores, as I've seen a screenshot before, I'm just going to show you the video on how it works with the analyzing, and Lev will actually show in the demo later on a little bit.
This is an example video.
Oh. Yeah. Oh. Okay, this is not going to work.
This is an example video.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go over. So essentially, this is loaded on the right sidebar. It will do some calculations based on the page you're currently visiting, and you can show some nice graphs in there and maybe some additional information about the page you're currently looking at. And Sitemores has also the ability that you can actually link to go to their website, and once you link to their website, it will actually show this overlay. And it will actually start putting this overlay over all these items which could be improved. And eventually what we're also going to make sure that in OpenUI we'll be able to do the same thing within the channel manager. But that's something that we are actually going to work on in the future. Everybody here is not Dutch, right? You are English speaking. I'll just continue in English. Yeah. All right. All right, so let's go back to the document field case. So I've been working on recreating the external document picker plugin. And generally, the idea of the external document quicker plugin is that you can integrate with third-party solutions with just using one UI. And this plugin I worked with is essentially a lot for the backend developers. For the ones that actually don't want to code front-end code, is that you can just implement several interfaces and you're able to retrieve information from any third-party system and display them into a picker. So what I've worked on is an integration with unsplash.com. Anybody know what it is or doesn't know what it is? It's an online resource where you can use images. So it's going to be an image browser. And actually, another one which I've just completed this morning is an integration with Giphy. Does everybody know Giphy?
Awesome.
Yeah. So just to be sure, that it works with two different connectors. I also want to implement Giphy. I think the more important ones that I think PM wanted me to work on were BRSM and commerce tools. First Giphy, yeah. All right. So let's go into the demo. I'm just going to go to the CMS. Oh. And maybe I should just show the Giphy one. All right. Is everybody able to see the screen? It's a little bit compacted. Anyway, so let me just go open to a document. This is just a simple content document, and I'm going to show later on how I added this OpenUI extension to the document. But for now, let's just see how it works, right? So this is the Giphy picker, and I already picked some images, but let's just open it back and pick some more. So currently the only options you're going to have is search, and then you can add some items to the list of selected items. So you can just click on the plus, and it will add it to the list of images you want to pick.
More hippos.
A lot of hippos. And of course, it also works with search. And you also have infinite scrolling in there as well. And once you're okay with it, you'll see your full list of images. And let me just go back to the visual editor view, just for you to see that it also works in the visual editor. These are all the images I just picked. Yeah, there we go. Because with the external document picker, this is I think still an issue. It won't work in the visual editor. But like the OpenUI plugins natively already work within the visual editor. All right, so this was an integration with Giphy, and going back to the document view. Oh, sure thing, why not? On the news document, I've embedded the same UI, but just I connected a different connector to it, which is the Unsplash connector. And this one, unfortunately, does not have the nice moving images like Giphy, but it does have the same features. And I'm already currently looking into extending it a little bit. So currently, as you've seen here, you can select multiple images, but you can also change the data mode to just be a single select. And you can do that in the console. You can select this, you can actually change this particular property, which is actually passed along to the OpenUI plugin, that you're going to go to single selection mode. But I'll go into that a little bit later as well.
So would this also work with parameters info stuff on components?
Eventually, yes. So that's actually our next part. So we're opening it up now for the document field and the page tools. But eventually, you also want to have it for the component parameters. And that actually, I think, has to do a lot with commerce, because we are in commerce. We actually have landing pages, and on those landing pages, we add a lot of components. And sometimes we want to pick products on those particular components. So hopefully next time, I think it's still loading. We'll have it as an extension point here on the right sidebar as well.
Open to components instead of
Yeah, no, but that's the idea. Yeah. But this one doesn't have any properties as it looks like, or they're just not displayed. All right. Any questions about the demo or something you want to see more? Yeah. So how it works, I'm going to go through how it works with OpenUI, but because of time, I'm also going to kind of make it a little bit short. If you want to know more about the external document picker, this week I'm going to write the documentation about it. But if you stay here afterwards, can also show you a little bit more in depth how it works and if you want to use it already. All right, so I'm going to show some configuration and some code, actually from start to end. Well, not completely to the end. I'm just going to make some shortcuts in between on how this works, how it's configured in the CMS, in the console, and how it's actually going to be rendered as an application. All right, so the first thing you need to do is you need to configure the extension field in your CMS. We created a separate registry for that. It's in the Frontend CMS UI extensions. And you need to add a node with a particular name in there with some properties. So the front-end config, you can actually add a JSON string in there, and those are the properties, or actually the JSON string you want to pass along to the OpenUI application. So it can be some configuration which the application starts with. It has some information about. Example would be that I want to pass along the title of the external document picker. Then there's also some other like properties in there, like the extension point. If it's a document field or a page tool, you can also have an initial height. So what would be the height of the extension point, and the URL. So where actually should it retrieve the front-end application from, or what should it embed in the iframe? In this case, example, it's a localhost 3002. But what I've also done is that I created a distribution or a build from my front-end project, and I put it on Amazon, and you can actually just point it towards that single point of UI. All right, so this is kind of how my configuration looks like. So I have a data mode, which I select multiple, but this one also supports single. I have a title for the dialog. I also have a size. I can, for example, make the dialog small, large, or medium. And I also have a default query, which was, as you've seen before, Hippo. All right, so next thing what you do is you go to the document type editor, and you add a new field, which has been added recently, the OpenUI string in there. And once you add, you're going to see that it cannot load the extension null. So somewhere at the bottom, you also need to add the UI extension, which you registered in the UI extension section in the console. Once you add, in this case, Giphy, it will actually start embedding the iframe in your document. And there you will have your external picker available. All right, so how does it work in your actual front-end code? So when you're starting out, you can do two things. You can install it as an NPM package and use that as an inclusion. So you will have access to this UI extension. What you can also do is add it in there as a standalone script. So depending on if you, for example, use Angular or React, you're probably much more working with NPM packages. But if you're just creating something very simple with an HTML file and some JavaScript, you might want to use standalone script. All right, what you do next is that you register the UI extension, and then you'll get back this UI object. And this is essentially what is required to establish the communication between the extension, the front-end project you have created, and the CMS. You'll be able to communicate back and forth on the properties which you want to get stored in that particular document. So you'll have availability to several static properties on the UI object, such as the base URL. You'll have a lot of standard information there, like the time zone, also some information about the user, etc., etc.
The current user that's logged in, or the user that you have to use for the?
No, the user that's currently logged in.
Yeah.
So from my OpenUI front-end project, I know the current user which is looking at that particular extension. Maybe I want to say, hello, John, how are you today? I think Lev is going to show this also in his demo, right? It will show kind of like a hello message with the name.
No, this is different.
Oh, this is a different one. Oh, sorry. All right. So one thing to note is that there is a difference between the available objects and functions when you're developing these two different types of extensions. So the page tool has different types of functions from the UI object than, for example, the document field one. We're going to go through it a little. We're going to go through it a little bit, but on the documentation side, we'll just have much more. So when you look at the document fields, the API function and the object properties, you can get the document, you can get the field value, you can set the value, you can get the compared value, so the one between the preview, so the one which is unpublished and the published. So you have access to all of these API functions to make sure that you can do whatever you want to do with this front-end project. You'll also have some other properties which you can access as well. All right. So I already told you that it's actually embedding an iframe. So what you have here in this red square is an iframe which is being configured to load in localhost 3002. When I click on Open Browser, I will actually embed an iframe within the dialog with /dialog. And you can actually choose in your code what the URL or the route should be. So for this particular case, I just want to show you because in the code, I've made sure that I create a front-end project. In this case, I am using React. I'm just creating two routes, one which is the exact route on in the first slash, and the other one is for the dialog. So in one, I'm loading on the app application, and the other one I'm using the external picker dialog. And I'm passing along the UI object, which I'm registering right here. So that in both of those applications, or in both of those dialogs, I'll have access to the UI object so that I can have communication between the CMS and my project. So I'm actually not a front-end developer, so if something really looks ugly here, just let me know as well. I would really like to learn from it as well. Oh. Why is this one in there? Okay. All right, so when I look at my app.js, so that's actually the one which is rendering the second route, app UI, is that inside I would have the access to the UI object, I would get the document, and from the document I could, for example, get the mode. So which mode am I currently at? Am I in edit mode or am I in view mode? So based on the mode, I'm actually showing or hiding the open browser button. Once I click on the open browser button, it will actually execute this snippet of JavaScript in which it will create the dialog, and it will make sure that the /dialog will get rendered in that iframe. So with just a couple of lines of code, you'll be able to create a very simple dialog and interact between the CMS and the front-end application. All right. So that's it very shortly about the external document picker. Like I said before, if you have any questions more in detail later on how it exactly works with the connectors, let me know. But essentially, it will be very similar as you've created the external document picker before. It will be very similar to what you know as the facade. We will have something that's equally the same. Eventually, if you're writing Java code, you only need to implement two classes to make the external document picker work and register one Spring XML file. For the client, to the third-party system, for both cases as Unsplash and Giphy, I'm using Crisp to actually as the client to retrieve the information from those third-party systems.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, but if you're using Crisp already, can we do this without iframes first? I mean, I know I'm kind of an iframe hater.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. So OpenUI only works with iframes, unfortunately. Yeah. I think that we've also implemented Binder with the CK editor, and in CK editor we actually loaded the
a front-end application indirectly. So that's actually an alternative. I think it is possible, but with OpenUI, it isn't. Yeah. All right. So this is it regarding the Solo document picker. Next up is Lev. Is going to show the page tools in the Google Analytics plugin.